what I'm going to do is to share the vision for artificial intelligence, the implementation of artificial intelligence that is being thought about in the Indian government. Of course, the pandemic has, in many ways, accelerated the pace of these by really showing up the importance of the digital economy and possibilities that none of us thought really existed before the pandemic now have become, have been shown to be really, to manifest. And that, I think, it will be one of the key aspects for which, positive aspects that this year will be remembered for. So I'll start with a vision that was articulated in the Economic Survey of July 2019, where we wrote a chapter which was titled Data by the People, of the People, for the People. And it was, the idea there was thinking about data as a public good, where the data that is brought together and data sets, there are a lot of them, administrative data sets, third-party data sets, survey data sets, all of which can be brought together, and thereby by providing a 360-degree view on data, while at the same time, of course, respecting all the necessary requirements for confidentiality, which already has been created, now in India. I think the value added that can be provided for processing, for analytics, is just enormous. Jayesh Ranjan was mentioning about the initiative on health tech. I think that is a very, very important initiative. Especially, and this is something that was described in that particular chapter as well, thinking about having the records of all the health records of each individual, and the idea there is to vision an India where anybody could be going to a hospital anywhere in the country, and his or her records could be pulled out just from the database. And now, not is it that of course enables access, ease of access, but what is far more important is the ability to do modeling in terms of bringing understanding, and predictive modeling, and then prescriptive efforts by bringing together such kind of data. I think the data that is being collected through the Atmanirbhar Bharat and other and several other insurance schemes that are being launched by states as well. I think the data that comes together there can be put together with many other third-party data sets to create data as a public good. The basic idea there was that when we think about roads and highways as public goods, and user charges are levied on using those highways, a similar effort can also be thought about where the government puts together these disparate data sets, adds value in the process, and thereby enables the private sector to use these data sets and levies a user charge for that. I think which can create the win-win, what we economists think about as Pareto optimality. So within that broad framework, health tech, of course, is one big area. Recently, many of you would have also read about how the government is thinking about using drones for identifying, for coming up with, very careful property records, because one of the key ways in which people at the bottom of the pyramid can access credit and get access to formal financing is through through land, and oftentimes the disputes on land make it very difficult. Land titles many times are not existent, and the idea here is to try and really use the value of technology to enable such property records to be created, which would be a very seminal step in creating that basic data to enable further processing. So these are these are but two examples. I think the prospects for agri-tech, for instance, especially with the seminal reforms that have been done on the agriculture side, be it on the APMC or the Essential Commodities Act, and the prospects for development of the food processing industry is another big area where where I think AI and machine learning can come together to really enable better crop choice, and at the same time enable diversification. One of the key problems that exists in India is the fact that crop diversification is not very large. At the same time, even the sowing decisions oftentimes are actually they do not take into account the aggregate market scenarios, and that's why one oftentimes gets these volatility in prices because of the free rider problem, as we economists think about. So apart from health tech, in the use in land tech and agri tech, I think about the use of AI especially being very valuable in the financial sector. And the reason I think about it is because if you look at the opportunity there is in the financial sector, I think it is enormous. In India, compared to the size of its economy, in terms of the financing, and the financial sector itself punches way below its current weight. We are the 5th largest economy in the world, and yet in terms of the penetration of credit within the country, if you look at the private credit to GDP ratio in India, it's about 52%. The average for OECD economies, on the other hand, is about 160%, which means that even if we were to grow 3 times in terms of the credit penetration, we would be only catching up with the average among OECD economies. And this is where the application of AI, machine learning can really be very useful. An aspect that was covered in great detail in this year's economic survey, looking at in the chapter on the golden jubilee of bank nationalization. So I'm going to spend some time, giving specific, laying out the specific ideas that can be exploited by many companies in this area. So this relates to the absence of data analytics and machine learning, artificial intelligence, etc. in the corporate lending space. If one looks at the way in which the banking sector has grown over the last 25 to 30 years in India, it has been a phenomenon of accelerator and brake, which is, when the economy does well, the banking sector goes headlong, ends up giving credit without actually taking into account adequate, measures on the quality. And this is where the importance of, models, credit rating models based on AI can be very useful. I'll give you a specific example here. I'm sure all of you, would have heard about Deep Blue, the software that was developed by IBM. Now, I think what many people oftentimes maybe do not take into account is that this software was not even taught the rules of chess. It was only fed the millions of games. That software ended up learning not only the rules of chess, but also the tactics and the strategy for playing chess, and ended up defeating the highest ELO rated player ever in human history, Garry Kasparov. Now, the reason I actually bring up this example is, compared to the tactics and strategy that are involved in a game of chess, which is far more complicated, the tactics or strategy that is used, let's say, in default, and especially in willful default, for instance, is almost childish. The number of ways in which willful default can happen or default can happen are a small fraction of the kind of tactics and strategy, the number of permutations and combinations that can result in a game of chess. And that is why this is an area that has significant scope. For instance, the use of transactions relating to the related party transactions. And this is something that we showed evidence on in the economic survey, that companies that willfully default are far more likely to be employing related party transactions. The quality of their disclosure is likely to be very poor. At the same time, the promoters' shareholding that is being pledged is also very high. Now these are simple patterns, but far more complicated patterns can also be unearthed by the use of AI and machine learning in the banking context. Because while retail lending typically does not employ that much sophisticated credit rating models, in the area of corporate lending, especially large corporate loans, and the possibilities being higher, I think the use of AI and machine learning is quite apt, and there are many models out there that are already employing this. So the Indian banking sector can really benefit from implementing this, and especially in the context of corporate lending. Because if we look at the Indian banks, even private sector banks, when they use these analytical models, they have used it primarily in the context of retail lending. It has not been used as much in the context of corporate lending, and evidence shows that when better models are employed, the banks that employ such models are able to grow their balance sheet in a very robust manner without suffering quality issues. And so this is a very important opportunity. Even for instance, to grow the lending beyond the usual borrowers. For instance, if one looks at the magnitude of lending to MSMEs, that has remained stagnant over the last 15 years, which basically suggests that our banks have not developed models to actually go and lend to MSMEs. Another opportunity is, if you look at the 40 crore, which is about 400 million bank accounts that have been created as part of the financial inclusion program, the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, and the transaction history that has now been developed over the last 5 years, using that for AI models, all kinds of financial services products, not only loans, can be really designed, and this is really fortune that can be created at the bottom of the pyramid. Even moral hazard, adverse selection problems, etc. in insurance, at the bottom of the pyramid, can really be enabled by bringing together such models. Similarly, the bringing together the postal bank, for instance, which is a payment bank, and the post office savings bank, which has deposits data. The post office payments bank has transaction data. Bringing together both of those and utilizing the fact that a post office is there in every nook and corner of the country, and thereby overlaying AI models for predicting the ability to repay and willingness to repay. I think the prospects of financial inclusion are just enormous. What I would want to summarize and say that apart from the emphasis on health tech, agri tech, land tech, I think fintech especially is an enormous opportunity that India is ready to exploit, and I think COVID has really illustrated those benefits. So India is uniquely positioned to utilize these, given the emphasis on the digital economy that has happened amidst the COVID. So let me congratulate the conference organizers for a very relevant conference and holding it at this point in time. And I look forward to the various advances in these areas and to stay connected with them.